Welcome back, Carlsbad resident. You are watching a waste reduction video on home vermicomposting. This resource is sponsored by the City of Carlsbad's Sustainable Materials Management Division, and it is made especially for you. I am Lucian, and I am your guiding host. This is the second video on vermicomposting. In the first one, I spoke about a few basics about food waste, what can you kind of do at home about it, and some basics on what's happening in your vermicompost system at home, what to expect, what to look for, what's really happening from a scientific point of view and biological point of view. This system that I am about to show you right now is a system that we distribute for Carlsbad residents. It is a system that is subsidized by the City of Carlsbad Sustainable Materials Management Division and is especially made for you. The first thing in the system and that you will need to have is a bin, the top bin. This is considered the top bin. This is where most of the vermicomposting is going to happen, where your worms are going to live and where you're going to put your food waste, your kitchen scraps in. It is pre-drilled for two main reasons. One is to allow airflow in the vermicompost bin. This is very important for success in vermicomposting at home and vermicomposting in general. It also has these two lids fitting kind of loose, so therefore airflow is going to be very effective in this bin here. Another reason why we have pre-drilled, why we have holes at the bottom, is for extra moisture to basically be able to drain into the catchment tray. So this catchment tray does not have holes at the bottom. However, we do have these two pieces of wood. We're recycling some pieces of wood here at our homestead, and it also comes with a system for you as a Carlsbad resident. These are risers, so then when you put your bin inside of this catchment tray, it's going to keep it a little bit above. The next thing you need is bedding. Okay, so bedding at your house, you can buy different type of materials too. You can buy cocoa cord. However, why not use something that you already have? I'm pretty sure you read newspapers, and guess what? The worms like to read them too. So the bedding needs to be from a material such as a newspaper. If you have a shredder, you can definitely use a shredder. I like to use these shredders. They will eventually consume this material also. It's made from plants. Okay? You want to add about 2 to 3 inches at the bottom of your bin. You can also use some of your bags, your grocery bags that are paper-based. Another thing you can use is cardboard if you have if you have a source of cardboard. So I got myself about 2 to 3 inches of bedding at the bottom of the bin, and now I'm going to get my worms in there. So if you get them from us or you get it from another source, it usually comes in some bedding material and possibly even some of their castings, which is the vermicompost. What you want to start with is about 1 pound of worms. 1 pound of worms can consume a half a pound to a full pound of kitchen scraps in just a few days. Now, what you should know is that the day you receive or you get your worms, you should introduce them to the system that day. You could feed them right away. So I basically introduce them, just put them on top of that bedding. I am going to just add this food waste. You can add it to the side of where you put the worms, or you can add it straight on top of the worms. Some people prefer to put all this kitchen scraps through a food processor so that the worms can eat it faster. It's not necessary, but you could definitely do it. They do like eggshells, and I'll tell you why, and I'm about to do this right now. Why they like eggshells is because they use that to kind of like clean their inside after eating all these veggies and all these fruits. So you can definitely add eggshells. Some people also add a handful of soil or sand from the garden. It acts the same like that eggshell. It's really important to put more bedding on top of all of that food waste. You can do it in a few ways. You can still rip it like this, or if you have a shredder, you can do that. And you want to place it basically on top. You can also take those big sheets of newspaper and lay a few of them, maybe possibly poking some holes, so kind of there's like some air flowing in there. You want to cover as well as you can the top with a few layers of this newspaper. As I said, you can also shred it really small and do your best to put about 2 to 3 inches, because that's the kind of like height that may achieve that goal to not let insects kind of like find their way to the food waste. Or you can just put it flat like this. The last step that you want to take is to add water. This is important. Moisture is very important to the system. You want to keep the system as a wrung out sponge. Here's how it looks from above. This is the bedding that we put to cover all the kitchen scraps. And then the worms are somewhere in there. I hope you don't mind me digging. Here they are. And they're gonna go to work. It's gonna take them possibly a day or two to get used to the system and start consuming this food waste. So there you have it. You just got yourself a vermicompost system started. One very important thing, just don't turn the stuff inside of this bin. In time, you can actually see another reason why we chose this kind of bin. You can see the food scraps disappearing and transforming into worm castings, your vermicompost, your compost for your garden. You'll be able to see that, and you'll make a decision that you need to feed again. In general, you might want to feed once a week. Some people can even feed every 3 to 4 days. So when you want to feed again, you open your bin, you lift your top bedding, maybe using a glove, and you add food scraps again on top of the castings that you see. You put the bedding back on, possibly use some water. This is the same thing you would do when you plan to harvest your castings, to harvest your compost. What you'll want to do is like a regular feeding. You'll want to wait for most of the food scraps to be transformed into castings. And you will take a good handful of food waste and add it into one corner of the bin. In a day or two, possibly 3 days, most of the worms will navigate towards those food scraps. Therefore, you go back and you can actually harvest the castings from the opposite corner of the bin. And you can actually go and use this straight into your garden. Sometimes you may be feeding the system too much food waste, and the worms and the bacteria and the microorganisms in there may not decompose it in time. So you may possibly get some anaerobic decomposition in there and get you some smells. If that happens, what you'll want to do, hopefully using a glove at this time, you'll want to remove the top bedding, observe where the rotting is happening, and possibly remove it and put it in your outside hot compost or cold compost, or unfortunately put it in the trash. If you leave for a while, your worms will be okay maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, as long as they are in a cool and dark space. If you leave for more than that, make sure you have somebody taking care of your gardeners here, your composters. So how do you use castings? As I said earlier, you can just harvest and you can put that straight into your garden. But the best way is to actually make a vermicompost tea. You'll have this liquid that is filled with nutrients and with life that you can use on a bigger surface in your garden. Thank you for watching, and I hope I will see you soon in other videos on waste reduction. Again, remember, I am Lucian, your guiding host, and this resource is sponsored by the City of Carlsbad's Sustainable Materials Management Division. Enjoy.